She saw the cold, controlled millionaire lose his composition and explode with jealousy over his neighbor. The moment Layla Hart stepped into the elevator of her new apartment building, she had absolutely no idea that her quiet life was about to collide with a man who had built an empire by never losing control. And she certainly had no idea that one day she would be the reason he finally did.
I know, right?
The elevator doors slid open with a soft metallic whisper, revealing a sleek lobby flooded with warm golden light. Everything smelled expensive. Polished marble floors, minimalist sculptures, fresh orchids arranged with mathematical precision. It was the kind of building where people walked fast, spoke softly, and pretended not to notice each other. Layla didn't belong here. Not really. Her coat was thrift store wool. Her suitcase wheels squeaked slightly, and her hands trembled as she clutched the envelope containing the keys to apartment 1704. The receptionist had barely looked at her when she arrived earlier that afternoon.
I hope you like it.
The moving company had mistaken her for a delivery assistant, and the doorman had asked if she needed directions to the service entrance. She had smiled politely through every small humiliation, because this apartment was her fresh start, and she refused to ruin it by crying on the first day. She stepped inside the elevator and pressed the button for the 17th floor. The doors closed slowly, sealing her into a mirrored box that reflected her nervous smile back at her from every angle. Then the elevator stopped at the penthouse floor. The doors opened again, and the air changed. He stepped in like a storm that had learned how to wear a suit.
I can't explain. It's
impossibly composed.
Try me. I need
Dark
to know.
tailored coat draped over broad shoulders. Jaw sharp enough to cut glass. His presence filled the elevator before the doors even finished closing. Adrian Cole, the youngest billionaire in the city. The man business magazines called the Ice King of Finance. The man who never smiled. The man rumored to fire executives for speaking out of turn. The man whose company owned half the skyline outside the building's windows. Layla didn't know any of this yet, but she felt it instantly. The gravity of him. The stillness. The silence that followed him like a shadow. He pressed the button for the garage without looking at her. His reflection in the elevator mirror remained perfectly still, eyes forward, posture flawless. Not a single wasted movement. Layla tried not to stare. She failed within 3 seconds. There was something unsettling about someone so controlled. No fidgeting. No phone scrolling. No sighs. No human imperfections. Just calm, disciplined silence. He finally noticed her reflection watching him, and turned his head slightly. Their eyes met in the mirror. Layla immediately looked down, heat flooding her cheeks. "New tenant?" he asked. His voice was deep, smooth, and dangerously calm. "Yes," she answered quickly. "I just moved in." He nodded once. A tiny motion. Efficient. Economical. "Welcome." That was it. One word. No smile. No follow-up question. No polite conversation. But something in his tone lingered in the air long after he spoke. The elevator reached the garage floor. The doors opened. He stepped out without another glance. And yet the space felt emptier the moment he left. Layla exhaled slowly. She had the strange feeling she had just met someone important. She had no idea how right she was. The first week in the building was exactly what she expected. Lonely. Quiet. Invisible. Layla worked as a junior accountant at a mid-size firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't impressive.
Are you sure
It paid the
about
bills
this?
and left little room for mistakes. She spent
Alright,
her
but let's
days
be
buried in
careful.
spreadsheets and her evenings assembling second-hand furniture. Her apartment slowly began to feel like home. Soft lamps, thrifted bookshelves, hand-me-down plants. The only thing missing was noise. Human noise. That changed the following Friday night. At exactly 11:48 p.m., thunder shook the ceiling above her bedroom. Not real thunder. Music. Deep bass vibrating through the walls like a heartbeat. Layla sat upright in bed, confused. She checked the time. Midnight approaching. The music didn't stop. It got louder. She pressed her pillow over her ears. Turned over. Tried to ignore it. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Then 40. Finally, frustration won. Layla climbed out of bed wearing oversized pajama shorts and a faded t-shirt, tied her hair into a messy knot, and marched upstairs barefoot. She told herself she was going to politely ask her upstairs neighbor to lower the music. She told herself she wasn't nervous. She lied. The penthouse hallway looked different from the rest of the building. Warmer lighting. Thicker carpets. Larger doors. She stood in front of the only door on the floor and knocked. The music stopped instantly. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Adrian Cole stood there in gray sweatpants and a fitted black t-shirt, holding a glass of whiskey. His hair was slightly messy. His eyes dark and surprised. And for the first time, the billionaire didn't look perfectly composed. He looked human. "Is the music too loud?" he asked immediately. Layla blinked. "A little." He nodded once and disappeared into the apartment. The music shut off completely. When he returned, he leaned lightly against the doorframe. "I apologize." Simple. Direct. Sincere. She hadn't expected that. "It's okay," she said. She stopped speaking when she realized how close they were standing. How tall he was. How intensely he was looking at her. Something shifted in his expression.
Try me.
Something quiet.
Not now.
Curious. Dangerous. "Good night, Layla." Her heart skipped. "You know my name? You signed for a package yesterday." Of course he had noticed. Of course he had remembered. She smiled nervously. "Good night, Adrian." It was the first time she had said his name. And something changed in the silence between them. The next morning, a handwritten note appeared under her door. "I apologize again for the noise. If you ever need anything, I'm upstairs. A." Layla read the note 3 times. Then placed it carefully in her drawer like it was something fragile. Something important. Upstairs, Adrian Cole stared out at the city skyline, gripping his coffee mug tighter than necessary. Because for the first time in years, his perfectly controlled world had developed a crack. And he had no idea how dangerous that crack would become. He just knew one thing. The quiet girl downstairs was already changing everything. And he didn't even know why. The neighbor who smiled at her. And the billionaire who couldn't take it. Layla tried to pretend she wasn't thinking about Adrian Cole. She tried to tell herself that the note under her door was just good manners. That his calm apology was just basic decency. That the brief moment his eyes had lingered on her messy, sleepy face meant absolutely nothing. But the truth was, her life had been quiet for so long, that even a small ripple felt like a tidal wave. And Adrian Cole? He wasn't a ripple. He was an entire storm. The next few weeks turned into an accidental routine. Every morning, Layla left for work around the same time. Every morning, the elevator doors would open, and he would be there, dressed in sharp black suits, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and discipline. They barely spoke. But the silence between them didn't feel empty. It felt loaded. Sometimes he gave her a short nod. Sometimes she whispered, "Good morning," and he answered in that low voice that made her stomach tighten in a way she didn't understand. And sometimes, when she wasn't looking, she could swear she felt his eyes on her.
Tell me.
Not in a rude way.
Complicated. Just follow
In a
me.
way that made her feel seen. Which was terrifying. Because Layla had spent most of her life being ignored. Or worse, judged. At work, she was the quiet girl. The one people forgot to invite for lunch. The one managers talked over in meetings. The one senior accountants called sweet, like it was a compliment, even when they meant small. When she tried to present ideas, they got dismissed. When others repeated them later, they got praised. And she swallowed it. Because she needed the job. Because she had learned long ago that respect wasn't given freely to people like her. People who didn't have connections. People who didn't have money. People who didn't wear confidence like armor. So she kept her head down, worked twice as hard, smiled through the disrespect, and told herself it was temporary. But then she'd come home to her building, and for a few seconds inside that elevator, she'd stand beside a man so powerful it was almost unreal. And something about being that close to Adrian Cole made her feel like she was standing near a door that could open into a completely different life. She didn't know if she wanted it to open. She just knew she couldn't stop staring at it. One Saturday afternoon, Layla was in the garage, struggling with a heavy box of books she'd bought secondhand. She wanted to build a small home library, something cozy, something hers. The box was heavier than she expected. Her arms shook as she lifted it out of her trunk. She took one step, then another, and then her grip slipped. The box tilted dangerously, books shifting inside. Layla sucked in a breath, bracing for the fall, and strong hands caught it. Effortlessly. The weight left her arms so suddenly she almost stumbled backward. "Don't," a deep voice said quietly. "You'll hurt yourself." Layla looked up. Adrian. He was dressed casually, gray athletic pants, a fitted jacket, hair slightly damp like he'd come from the gym. And something about seeing him like that made her heart do something foolish. "I was fine," she said automatically,
This pasta's
pride rising.
incredible. I know, right?
Adrian
So
raised a
good.
brow,
We have to make this
unimpressed.
again.
"You were
Definitely.
not." He carried the box to her storage space like it weighed nothing, then set it down carefully. Layla stood there, arms folded, annoyed at herself for needing help, and annoyed at him for making it look so easy. "Thank you," she muttered. He turned to look at her fully. His eyes didn't soften. They sharpened. "Next time, He said, calm but firm, ask for help. It wasn't a suggestion. It was almost an order. Layla's cheeks warmed. I don't like bothering people. Adrian stared at her for a second too long. Then he spoke and his voice dropped slightly lower. You wouldn't be a bother. The air shifted. Layla swallowed. Okay. He nodded once, satisfied, and started toward the elevator. But right before the doors closed, he glanced back at her. Layla. Yes. Pause. Almost like he was debating whether to say something. Then he simply said, be careful. And the doors slid shut. Layla stood frozen in the garage, heartbeat loud in her ears. Because nobody had said those words to her in a long time. Not like that. Not with meaning. Not as if they actually cared whether she was safe. That evening, Layla got an unexpected knock on her door. When she opened it, she was surprised to see a woman standing there with bright eyes and an elegant coat, carrying a bag of groceries like she owned the world. Hi, the woman said cheerfully. You're Layla, right? I'm Serena. Adrian's sister. Layla blinked. His sister? Yes. Serena beamed. And I've decided we're going to be friends. Before Layla could even respond, Serena swept inside like a warm breeze. She looked around the apartment, eyes widening. Oh wow, this is adorable. It's like cozy and real. Adrian's place looks like a furniture catalog that's allergic to feelings. Layla laughed without meaning to. Serena grinned triumphantly. There it is. The laugh. You're human.
This is a lovely
Perfect.
evening.
Layla tried not to
I'm
smile.
glad we could do this.
What are you
Me
doing
too.
here?
To us.
Serena lifted her grocery bag. I'm making pasta. And you're eating with me. Because you look like the kind of woman who forgets to eat when she's stressed. Layla hesitated. She didn't know this woman. She didn't know what Adri, Mr. Cole, would think. Serena rolled her eyes like she could read her thoughts. Relax. Adrian won't mind. He's not a monster. He just plays one in boardrooms. Layla couldn't help it. She liked Serena immediately. By the time the pasta was done, they were sitting at Layla's small dining table laughing like old friends. Serena talked fast, told stories, teased Layla gently about her tiny apartment that feels like a hug. And Layla, without even realizing it, started opening up. About her job. About how hard it was to be taken seriously. About how people assumed she didn't belong in certain spaces because she didn't look like them, speak like them, or come from what they called the right kind of background. Serena's smile faded as she listened. That's disgusting, she said quietly. And I'm sorry. Layla shrugged, too used to it. It's normal. Serena shook her head. No, it's common. But it's not normal. There's a difference. Layla stared at her plate, throat tightening unexpectedly. Because hearing someone say that, someone who came from privilege, felt like water in a desert. Serena leaned forward. Can I tell you something? Layla nodded. Serena's eyes sparkled. My brother noticed you. Layla choked on her water. Serena laughed. There it is. The panic. The denial. The adorable confusion. Layla covered her face. He did not. Oh, Layla, Serena said like it was obvious. Adrian Cole does not write apology notes. Adrian Cole does not carry strangers' boxes. Adrian Cole does not learn a woman's name from a package label and then say it like it matters. Layla's heart hammered. Maybe he's just
The view
polite.
from here is incredible.
Serena gave
It
her
really
a look.
is. I'm so glad we
My
came
brother
up
is
here.
many things.
Me too.
Polite is not the first word people use. Layla didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to feel. Because a part of her wanted to believe Serena. And another part, the wounded part, refused. Because hope was dangerous. Hope could make you forget who you really were in a world that reminded you daily you weren't enough. Serena stood, smiling again. Come upstairs tomorrow. Layla's head snapped up. What? Serena grabbed her bag. Dinner at our parents' house. They're warm, they're kind, and they'll love you. And before you say no, Adrian is already coming. Which is rare. So clearly the universe is doing something. Layla's mouth went dry. Serena winked. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. And then she walked out, leaving Layla standing there like her entire life had been spun slightly off its axis. Sunday came faster than Layla wanted. She stood in front of her mirror, staring at herself like she was seeing a stranger. She wore a simple black dress and a coat that made her feel older, sharper. She pinned her hair back. Put on lipstick for the first time in weeks. Not for Adrian. She told herself that 5 times. Not for Adrian. When Serena knocked, Layla's stomach flipped. They rode upstairs first to the penthouse, because Serena insisted they were picking up the iceberg. Layla stood awkwardly in the penthouse entryway while Serena shouted, Adrian! Hurry up, we're going to be late. Adrian emerged from a hallway adjusting his cufflinks. When he saw Layla, he stopped. Just for a second. But Layla saw it. His eyes flickered over her hair, her dress, her lipstick. And something in his perfectly controlled face shifted. Like a muscle in his jaw tightened. Like his lungs forgot how to breathe. Layla, he said softly as if the name belonged in his mouth. Adrian, she replied, suddenly too aware of her own voice. Serena grinned between them like she was watching a movie. Okay, great, you two can stare at each other later. Let's go.
Great to see you.
The Cole family home was elegant but warm. Soft lighting, real laughter, framed photos on the walls. Their mother hugged Layla like she already belonged. Their father asked her questions about her work with genuine interest. Layla tried not to be intimidated. But she couldn't ignore how different this world was. And she couldn't ignore Adrian's eyes. He barely spoke during dinner. But every time Layla laughed with Serena, every time she answered a question confidently, every time she looked comfortable in this wealthy space, Adrian looked at her like he was discovering something he hadn't expected. Like she was surprising him. Like he liked being surprised. After dinner, when Layla stepped onto the balcony for air, she heard footsteps behind her. Adrian joined her, holding 2 glasses of water. He handed one to her without a word. Layla accepted it. Thank you. They stood side by side overlooking the city lights. For a long moment they said nothing. And somehow it wasn't awkward. It was charged. Adrian finally spoke. You don't deserve what happens to you at work. Layla blinked. What? He turned slightly, eyes steady. Serena told me. Layla's face heated. She shouldn't have. I'm glad she did, Adrian said quietly. Because it makes me angry. Layla swallowed. It's not your problem. Adrian's jaw flexed. I don't like people dismissing you. That sentence hit her harder than anything else. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flirtation. It was a man who didn't waste words. Admitting that her treatment mattered to him. Layla looked down at her glass. I'm used to it. Adrian leaned closer just slightly, voice lower. You shouldn't be. Layla's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. Adrian exhaled like he was restraining something. Good night, Layla. He walked away before she could respond. And Layla stood on that balcony shaking because she suddenly realized something terrifying. The billionaire upstairs wasn't just noticing her. He was starting to care. 2 nights later, the moment everything snapped, happened. Layla attended a small dinner party Serena invited her to, an apartment in the city, casual but classy. Music played softly. People laughed. Wine flowed. Layla told herself she was only going because Serena begged. She told herself she was not going because she hoped Adrian would be there. Then she walked in. And saw Adrian. He stood near the window, dark suit, calm expression. Glass in hand like he was bored by the entire world. His eyes found her instantly. And for one heartbeat, the room disappeared. Then Serena dragged Layla into conversations. Introduced her to people. Told her to relax. Layla tried. And slowly she did. Until a man she hadn't met approached her near a bookshelf. He was tall, blonde, charming, dressed like confidence. I'm Derek Vaughn, he said, smiling wide. Investment consultant. Friend of the host. And you are beautiful. Layla stiffened slightly. Compliments like that usually came with expectations. I'm Layla, she replied politely. Nice to meet you. Derek leaned closer, voice warm. So, Layla, what do you do? I'm an accountant, she said. His smile changed instantly. Not gone. Just altered. A tiny flicker of dismissal, as if her value dropped the moment she said the word. Oh, he said, pretending enthusiasm. Cute. Cute. Layla felt her stomach sink. She hated that word. But she forced a smile. Yes. Derek kept talking anyway, clearly more interested in hearing himself than learning about her. He touched her arm casually, leaned in too close, laughed too loud. Layla tried to step back. Derek stepped closer. And across the room. Adrian saw it. Layla didn't notice at first. But Adrian did. He watched Derek's hand on her arm. He watched Derek lean closer. He watched Layla's polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. And something in Adrian Cole's expression darkened.
What's the timeline?
His jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped. His hand tightened around his whiskey glass. Because jealousy, real jealousy, hit him like fire. And Adrian Cole had never learned how to burn quietly. He started walking toward them. Fast. Controlled. But not calm. Not anymore. Layla turned at the movement, sensing something, and her eyes widened when she saw Adrian approaching like a man on the edge of losing himself. Derek noticed too and smirked, clearly amused. "Ah," Derek said loud enough for Layla to hear. "That must be your neighbor. The famous Adrian Cole. Well, didn't realize you had that kind of access." Layla's face tightened. "He's my friend's brother." Derek chuckled. "Sure. Of course." Adrian arrived beside them, eyes locked on Derek like he was calculating how much damage he could do without touching him. "Layla," Adrian said, voice cold. Then he looked at Derek. "What are you doing?" The room didn't go silent, but the air did. Derek laughed lightly. "Talking. Is that illegal now?" Adrian's smile was razor thin. "It might be," Adrian said, "if you don't remove your hand from her." Layla's breath caught. Derek's eyes flicked to his own hand still on her arm. Slowly he removed it, but his grin remained. "Relax, Cole," Derek said. She didn't seem to mind. Layla opened her mouth to speak, but Adrian spoke first, and his control cracked. "She doesn't have to mind," Adrian said, voice dangerously calm. "You don't get to treat her like she's a toy you're testing." Derek's eyes narrowed. "And why do you care?" Adrian's gaze snapped to Layla for half a second, then back to Derek. And in that moment, Layla saw it. The billionaire who never lost composure, exploding inside his own skin. Because his voice dropped, sharp as steel. "Because I do." The words landed like thunder. Layla stood frozen. Because Adrian Cole had just admitted it. Not politely.
Oh, this is so
not quietly.
thoughtful.
Not
I
safely.
hope you like it.
In front of
love it.
everyone.
Thank
He
you.
cared.
You're welcome.
And his jealousy was no longer something he could hide. The night the world learned who she really was. The silence after Adrian's words didn't last long. But it lasted long enough to change everything. Because people heard him. Not just Derek. Not just Serena. Everyone within earshot had heard the city's most controlled billionaire say 3 words that sounded dangerously close to an admission. "Because I do." Layla's heart was pounding so loudly she was sure the entire room could hear it. The warmth from Derek's hand on her arm was gone, replaced by something far more overwhelming, Adrian's presence standing beside her like a storm that had finally broken. Derek let out a short laugh, the kind men used when they didn't know what else to do with embarrassment. "Well," he said, raising his glass, "I didn't realize she was under protection." The insult was subtle, polite, poisoned. Layla felt it immediately. So did Adrian. His eyes darkened another shade. "She isn't under protection," Adrian said quietly. "She's under respect." The sentence landed like a slap. Several people nearby pretended to sip their drinks while openly listening. Layla wished the floor would swallow her whole. Not because Adrian embarrassed her, but because he had defended her so fiercely, and she had never experienced anything like that before. Derek lifted his hands in mock surrender. "Relax. I was just talking to her." Adrian stepped slightly closer. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just close enough that Derek understood the invisible boundary. "Then you're done talking." It wasn't a request. Derek stared at him for a long moment, calculating whether it was worth challenging a man who could ruin his career with a phone call. It wasn't. He chuckled, shrugged, and walked away. Just like that. The room exhaled. And Layla stood frozen beside Adrian, trying to understand how her life had turned into something that felt like a scene from a movie. Serena appeared out of nowhere with a wide grin. "Wow, that was fun. I'm getting dessert." She disappeared just as quickly, clearly leaving them alone on purpose. Layla turned slowly toward Adrian. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." "Then why did you?" Adrian hesitated. And for the first time since she had met him, he looked unsure of himself. "I don't like how people talk to you," he said finally. Layla swallowed. "You barely know me." His gaze softened just slightly. "I know enough." Her chest tightened. Because she didn't know what to do with a man who saw her so clearly. She didn't know what to do with someone who refused to pretend she was invisible. And most of all, she didn't know what to do with the way he was looking at her now. Like he had already lost a battle he never planned to fight. After the party, they ended up in the elevator together again. The familiar box of mirrors felt smaller than ever. Neither of them spoke. But the silence wasn't the same silence from weeks ago. This silence was heavy with words they didn't know how to say. The elevator stopped at Layla's floor. She stepped out, then hesitated, turning back before the doors closed. "Adrian?" "Yes." Her voice came out softer than she intended. "Why do you care?" The question hung between them like fragile glass. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, then answered honestly. "I don't know." The doors slid shut before she could respond. And somehow that answer felt more real than any romantic speech could have been. The next week became a turning point in Layla's life. But not because of Adrian. Because of her job. Monday morning began with an email that made her stomach drop. Mandatory executive meeting. Conference room A, 9 a.m. Junior accountants were never invited to executive meetings. Never. Layla walked into the glass conference room feeling like she had entered the wrong building. Senior managers filled the table. Directors whispered to each other. The CEO stood at the head of the room with a tablet in his hands. He barely looked at her. "Take a seat," he said, already annoyed. Layla sat quietly at the far end of the table, heart racing. The meeting began. Numbers flashed across the screen. Forecasts, projections, charts, rising voices, frustrated arguments. The company was in trouble. A major client had discovered a discrepancy in a financial report. Millions were at stake. Reputations were at risk. Executives blamed each other. Directors argued. Senior analysts shifted responsibility. No one had answers. Layla did. She had found the error 3 days earlier while reviewing reports. She had written a detailed explanation and emailed it to her supervisor. He never responded. She had assumed he was handling it. He wasn't. Now the entire executive board was panicking. Layla's pulse pounded in her ears. "Speak up," a voice in her head whispered. "Don't embarrass yourself," another voice replied. She swallowed hard. Raised her hand slightly. No one noticed. The conversation got louder. Layla lowered her hand again. Her supervisor spoke next, voice confident. "We're still investigating the discrepancy." Layla felt something shift inside her chest. Still investigating? Her email. Her report. Her analysis. Ignored. Again. And suddenly, something in Layla snapped. The quiet girl. The polite girl. The girl who swallowed disrespect because she needed the job. She stood up. "I already found the error."
It's wonderful.
The room
Have you
froze.
tried the champagne?
20 executives
Not yet, but I
turned toward
will.
her like they had just noticed she existed. Her supervisor's face drained of color. "Excuse me?" the CEO asked sharply. Layla's hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "It's a misclassified liability from the third quarter. It was carried forward incorrectly into the annual projection. The discrepancy looks large, but the fix is straightforward." Silence. The CEO stared at her. "And you know this how?" "I ran a cross-quarter audit last week. I emailed the full breakdown to my supervisor." Every eye in the room shifted to him. His mouth opened. Closed. The CEO turned back to Layla slowly. "You solved the problem, days ago?" "Yes." The CEO inhaled slowly, then nodded toward the screen. "Show me." Layla walked to the front of the room with shaking hands and connected her laptop. And then something incredible happened. She stopped being nervous. Because numbers were her language. Confidence replaced fear as she explained the error, the correction, the solution. Questions came. She answered every one. Challenges appeared. She dismantled them calmly. For the first time in her professional life. No one interrupted her. No one dismissed her. No one called her cute. They listened. When she finished, the CEO leaned back in his chair and stared at her for a long moment. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Are you a junior accountant?" Layla blinked. I just started here." The CEO nodded slowly. "That ends today." Her supervisor looked like he might faint. The CEO turned to the board. "Promote her to senior financial analyst. Effective immediately." The room erupted in quiet shock. Layla stood frozen. Because after years of being underestimated, justice had arrived in the most unexpected way. And she had earned it herself. That evening she stepped out of the elevator in a daze. Promotion. Recognition. Respect. All in one day. She walked toward her apartment, and stopped. Adrian stood outside her door holding a small box. Her breath caught. "What are you doing here?" He looked slightly uncomfortable. "Serena told me about your promotion." Layla blinked. "How does she know everything?" "She investigates for sport." Layla laughed softly. Adrian handed her the box. "Congratulations." Inside was a small desk nameplate. Layla Hart, Senior Financial Analyst. Her eyes stung unexpectedly. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." Silence wrapped around them. Then Adrian spoke again, voice quieter than she had ever heard it. "I'm proud of you." Layla's throat tightened.
Congratulations on this
Because
well-deserved
those
honor.
4 words meant
Thank you
more than
so
he could
much.
ever understand.
Enjoy the
And in
moment.
that moment, something undeniable formed between them. Something real. Something dangerous. Something neither of them knew how to stop. But the universe wasn't done testing them yet. Because the next challenge would be bigger than promotions, bigger than jealousy, bigger than feelings. And it would prove, once and for all, that Layla Hart was far more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. The day he lost control. And the world finally saw why. The promotion changed everything. But not in the way Layla expected. The respect she earned at work didn't arrive quietly. It came with whispers in hallways, curious glances in meetings, and a sudden shift in how people spoke to her. Colleagues who once talked over her now asked for her opinion. Managers who barely knew her name now praised her insights in front of executives. Felt good. It also felt strange. Because Layla had spent so long being invisible that visibility felt like standing under a spotlight she hadn't asked for. Still, she told herself this was what she wanted. Progress. Growth. Recognition. She had no idea that the next chapter of her life was about to test her strength in a way numbers never could. 2 weeks later, her CEO called her into his office. Layla sat across from him trying to hide her nerves. "I want you to attend the Northbridge Investors Gala," he said. Layla blinked. "The gala?" "Yes. You'll be representing the firm." Her stomach dropped. The Northbridge Gala wasn't just a party. It was one of the biggest financial events of the year. Billionaires, CEOs, investors, media, cameras. A room full of people who lived in the world Layla still felt like a visitor in. "I've never attended anything like that," she admitted quietly. The CEO nodded. "Exactly. It's time you start." Layla walked out of the office with shaky legs and a pounding heart. Because success was exciting. But stepping into the world of powerful people meant stepping into the world that had always looked down on her. That evening, Serena burst into Layla's apartment like a fashion hurricane. "Emergency," she declared. "We need a dress." Layla laughed nervously. "How did you?" "Adrian told me." He pretended he didn't care. It was adorable. Layla tried not to smile. Failed. Serena grabbed her arm. "You are going to that gala and you are going to destroy every stereotype in that room." 2 hours later, dresses covered every surface in Layla's apartment. Silk, satin, black, gold, emerald. Layla stared at herself in the mirror wearing a deep midnight blue gown Serena had chosen.
Welcome to the Global
She
Leadership
barely
Forum.
recognized the
In these
woman staring
challenging
back.
times, our collaboration
"You look
is more vital
powerful,"
than ever.
Serena
Thank
said
you.
softly. Layla whispered, "I feel terrified." Serena squeezed her hand. "Good. That means it matters." The night of the gala arrived wrapped in flashing cameras and polished marble floors. Layla stepped out of the car and froze. Hundreds of people filled the entrance hall. Designer gowns, tailored suits, sparkling jewelry, voices that sounded confident and effortless. This was their world, not hers. She took a breath, walked inside, and immediately felt the old feeling return. The subtle glances, the quiet judgments, the invisible question hanging in the air. Does she belong here? She lifted her chin anyway, because she had spent too many years shrinking. Tonight she refused. Across the ballroom, Adrian saw her, and everything else stopped. The noise, the conversations, the clinking glasses, gone. Layla stood near the entrance in midnight blue, eyes wide but determined, looking like a woman who had no idea how breathtaking she was. Adrian forgot how to breathe. Serena nudged him with a smirk. "Close your mouth. You're embarrassing the family." Adrian didn't respond. He was already walking toward her. When Layla saw him approaching, relief washed over her like warm sunlight. "You came," she said softly. "Of course I came." His voice dropped lower. "You look incredible." Layla's cheeks warmed. "Thank you." They stood closer than usual. Closer than friends. Closer than neighbors. Closer than either of them was ready to admit. But the night had other plans. The announcement came an hour later. A senior investor stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. "We'd like to recognize an extraordinary financial analysis that helped stabilize one of our partner firms this quarter." Layla's stomach tightened. A presentation appeared on the screen behind him. Her presentation. Her analysis. Her work. The room erupted into polite applause. "Miss Layla Hart, please join us on stage." Shock rooted her to the floor. Adrian leaned close. "Go." Her legs felt like glass as she walked to the stage. The spotlight hit her eyes. The investor shook her hand, smiling warmly. "Your work saved millions." "Millions." The word echoed in the ballroom. Cameras flashed. Applause grew louder. And suddenly the room that once judged her was applauding her. Respect earned in the most public way possible. Justice in real time. Layla blinked back tears as she stepped off the stage. She had done
This
it.
view is
She had
incredible.
proved she belonged.
It's perfect with you.
Then the whisper
I could
started.
stay here
A
forever.
woman in diamonds
Me too.
leaned toward another guest, voice just loud enough. "Adrian Cole's neighbor, isn't she?" Lucky girl. He must be helping her career. Layla froze. The applause still echoed in her ears, but the old poison crept in. Not earned. Given. Help. Lucky. Her chest tightened painfully. And Adrian heard it too. The billionaire who rarely reacted. The man who controlled every emotion. The man who never caused scenes. Finally snapped. He stepped forward, voice cutting through the whispers like thunder. She earned every bit of that recognition herself. The room went quiet. Every head turned. Adrian's gaze swept the crowd, sharp and unyielding. She solved a problem executives couldn't. She works harder than anyone in that building. And she deserves every ounce of respect you just gave her. Silence fell like a curtain. Layla stared at him, stunned. Because he wasn't protecting her privately anymore. He was defending her publicly. Openly. Without hesitation. Adrian turned to her, voice soft again. I hate when people underestimate you. Tears blurred Layla's vision. And in that moment, all the walls she had built to protect herself finally cracked. You always care, she whispered. Adrian's expression softened completely. I stopped trying not to. The truth settled between them like sunrise. Simple. Unavoidable. Real. Layla smiled through tears. You lost control. He nodded. I did. And you don't regret it? His answer came without hesitation. Not for a second. Layla stepped closer. The distance between them disappeared. The ballroom faded. The world shrank to a heartbeat. And when Adrian gently took her hand, it felt like the beginning of something neither of them had planned. But both had been moving toward from the very first elevator ride. Months later, Layla stood on the balcony of the penthouse overlooking the city. Their city. Her promotion had turned into a leadership role. Her confidence had grown into certainty. The quiet girl who once felt invisible now walked into rooms knowing she belonged. Adrian joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Do you remember the night you knocked on my door to complain about the music? He asked. Layla laughed. I almost ran away. I'm glad you didn't. She leaned into him, smiling at the skyline. So am I. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive as revenge. Sometimes it arrives as respect. Sometimes it arrives as growth. And sometimes it arrives as love.